Hey Joe, we're back here at the CXO Underground. We took a little bit of a break. We're I guess maybe this will be our holiday season. We did season one. So what's going on for the holidays for you?
Hey, Chief, it's great to be back on the podcast with you. It's another pandemic-filled fun and games. We're just a close family. My daughter and her boyfriend now are living with us at the house. That's been a lot of fun to have other people in the house for a change. I've explored every nook and cranny of the house as we've talked about on other podcasts. But we're looking for a pretty low key holiday season for sure. How about you?
Yeah, same thing. COVID's definitely keeping people indoors. We did kind of staycation for Thanksgiving this year. But yeah, it's all's been good. Just trying to get through this, right? This holiday season, and obviously a lot to be thankful for with family. We've been healthy, and knock on wood, things have been going well. But for you, are you having kids kind of looking at you in the car with the Santa beard going on? I mean,
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely an apprentice this year, so I'm loving it. Yeah, I get a little grief about that, because people see me and go, "Man, wait a minute, your beard should be a little longer by now." But no, it's good. It's been fun. I tell you, on the pandemic front, we may have talked about this in the previous podcast or two, but my wife and I are participating in the Moderna trials. So we are hopeful that we're going to hear in a couple of weeks whether or not they're going to unblind us, and we'll know whether or not we've gotten the vaccine. And we just heard from the CEO of Moderna yesterday or the day before, where he said that if you participated in the study, they're going to give people early access to the vaccine, so as an ethical sort of treatment. Because since we all volunteered, it's funny the reaction you get from people, Mike, when you tell them, and Terry, when you say, "Hey, we volunteered for this vaccine," they think we're nuts, like we're out of our minds. But it's been pretty uneventful, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I got the vaccine because I had the normal side effects. My wife didn't. We suspect she got the placebo, but we'll find out here soon.
well, we thank you, because it takes folks like yourself that are willing to do that for these things to work out. So paying it forward. Thanks, Joe. We appreciate that. So with that, we've got a special guest. I would say certainly a celebrity amongst those who are in the CIO ranks, especially here in Charlotte. Our guest is very well known. For selfish reasons, I'm really excited. I've been able to communicate with Terry. He's been very giving to us in regards to the Lake Norman IT professionals and the Valentine IT professionals, helping folks get connected and just being involved in the IT community. I know there's other things that Terry has done that definitely showcase his way of giving back to the IT community. So super excited about having our guest today. Do you mind kicking off it with our guest?
Absolutely. Well, welcome, Terry Morgan. It's so fantastic to have you on the podcast today. I'll do just a quick overview of your history and background. I know you've been in the Carolinas since the early 1980s. You've had many roles across the globe, so you're a global technology leader with a great reputation. You're currently Chief Executive Officer at Macro Integration Services up in the Greenboro, Winston-Salem marketplace. You also have your own consulting agency, Morgan Advisory Services, and you continue to provide advisory services to JVN and Core Compete. You're very active in the NC Tech marketplace on NCTA, and just been very active here locally with interim roles at extended stay as well as Lowe's in a couple of different capacities. So we're thrilled to have you on the podcast, Terry. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the invitation to join both of you and the viewers. So thanks.
I'd love to kick it off. I know that you've had a particular passion around change and radical change. Love to get your perspective on what that means and what the implications were of the organizations you've served.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think I've been very fortunate to be in organizations that were receptive to change and suggestions. Having come out of the grocery industry for so many years, very competitive, had to be very lean, and certainly has had to adapt. And I was able, sort of mid-career, to take about a 6-year stint at Deloitte Consulting, where I really got to get a much deeper appreciation for what change management, change leadership, not the technology part of it, but human change, what that really implied for how to drive better results. And so as I kind of came back into industry as a CIO, I started to take some of those learnings and always sort of approach my executive roles like I was still a consultant in many respects, to try to, be outside in looking and help to figure out what do we need to do to drive change. So, but again, I tell people I'm very fortunate. The companies I've gotten to work with, the people I've gotten to work with, it's just been tremendous. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Macro Integration Services, and they've been able to allow me to go do some of these other things while I'm still CEO. So I'm extremely lucky that I can do those kinds of things. So, so anyway, that's where I would start with it.
Yeah, change is this constant thing that we've all experienced in technology. Can you describe any of the massive changes that you've been a part of initiating, and sort of what the implications were to the businesses that you were working with?
Yeah, I mean, I'll maybe just hit a couple that are probably, because I have a number of them in my reservoir, I guess. But, first, when I was, beginning, as I was global CIO for Deleuze Group, the parent company of Food Lion, was really to help drive efficiency. And I came forward with the recommendation as part of the executive committee that we needed to move to administrative shared services. So, we had a number of banners at that time, two big ones in the US, in particular, Food Lion and Hannaford, and, no need in continuing to do sort of the back office stuff differently. So led that, and even when I retired, I call that, but I did a year of consulting to help implement those shared services for Deleuze America. And definitely that takes a lot of change leadership and gaining support from executives, because it's not only the people who are doing the work that are impacted, the systems and the processes, but it impacts, what sort of kingdom these, CEOs were leading. It's a different feel, and how do they buy into it and become part of, leading that change. So that was a big one. And more recently, it was definitely the opportunity of my career was I was invited into Lowe's Home Improvement in Mooresville, North Carolina. And first as an executive advisor, because the new CEO, Marvin Ellison, had come in, was bringing in a new executive team. And there was a change in the CIO role, and they wanted somebody to kind of keep an eye on it and sort of help provide some feedback back to the executives. But then pretty quickly they asked if I would go in and be the interim CIO. And what we saw was, a business, certainly they brought in a new CEO because the board wanted to see some different things happening, right? So you kind of go with, there was already an impetus for change that was there. Secondly, there'd been some really tough technology things, terrible website performance over Black Friday weekends, a lot of systems outages, huge investments in packaged software that had been going on for 7-8 years and not coming to life, some write-offs of things. So there was, right to sort of look at it, and being able to come in initially and sort of do the examination as an independent third party was a great, welcome into, helping to drive change. But then, went to first Marvin Ellison and said, this is really broken. There's huge opportunities. And along the way, I asked him a question. I said, do you want to be just get it better? Do you want to get technology to be as good as Home Depot, or do you want to be one of the best? And he said, I want to be one of the best. I said, in retail or overall? I want to be one of the best, period. I was like, okay, and here it comes. Here's the strategy we're going to need to pursue. And what, proceeded to do, and then got not only the agreement of the executive team, but then the board, as we were recruiting to fill my replacement, who was Samantha Godbole, a great executive. But we started to put all this together in the form of I'll call it the package, to be really have a digital transformation of the business, to move to becoming really a software development company, and we've branded that, as Lowe's Tech. We're building a building over in the south end of Charlotte that will house technology right on the rail line, because we really wanted to change, not only the results, but part of changing the results, you have to change everything around it, how we recruit people, how we retain people, how we pay people, our branding, et cetera. You can just go through all those elements, is what I started to bring to the table. And I once said to Marvin, we're going to have to throw out the old retail rule book, because we're going to have to break every rule in terms of how we go about doing this. And it's really to develop our own software using open source and really become a digital company, which is the mission they've made great progress with. Again, Samantini was the right person to lead it. One of the things I think that's important from a leadership perspective, I could have the ideas, but she's somebody who's been there and done it. She'd done it at Target. So, she knew how to do it, which is different. But so I understand my limitations, but she's been great, and they've been making great progress along their journey.
Yeah, I've been a close follower too. I've been a customer both at Home Depot and Lowe's, and it's been interesting to see the evolution at Lowe's. It's starting to show up in their service delivery. I know that the supply chain for hardware and lumber and all of that has been pretty disrupted.
Yeah, with Canada and everything. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can't buy a 2x4 that's like 3 times the cost it was, 7 months ago.
Right.
Point of sale, like for me, Selfless Solutions, I try to buy from the hometown, companies, right, and going to Lowe's. Traditionally, before your time, Terry, being there, green screens, right, when they're checking people out. So for whatever reason, that was what they've been rolling with. But it seems like there's more intelligence, better intelligence for folks that are kind of checking you out. So just for little things definitely really helps. For before, it just seemed like there really wasn't much data or point of sale type of intelligence there at the end, where now it seems like the folks that are checking you out have a lot more intelligence in regards to helping the customers, right? So it's kind of neat to see that change.
Yeah, it was interesting, Mike, to, because that was one of the things, again, the difficulty of change, because you would go out and talk to retail, and that green screen is called Genesis. It was an internally developed system. And people hated it. They would complain about sounds like a train going behind you there, Joe. I don't know. But they would hated the green screen. They would lose new employees because it's just so difficult to train and everything else. But when it came down to, well, you can't get this done, this is broken, and they had like 12 different systems they would have to use in the store. It'd be like, so what do you do? And well, I use Genesis. I can always depend upon it. So what we had to do was get a better front end. And, and the way the strategy is to build the front end, still use some of these legacy systems behind, and then chip away at the functionality of those legacy systems until they disappear altogether with service-oriented knowledge.
Yeah, kind of geeking out, looking over their shoulder. You could definitely see it's a lot more intuitive. The web interface is, not like we're at the library, back in the 80s, right? So it's definitely neat to see that transition.
Yeah, it has been, and I think in terms of knocking down barriers for customers, they've done a nice job. And you can just, if you go online, you can check inventory, you get a pretty close estimate as to whether they've got the product that are not in stock, and then what aisle it's in and what bay in the aisle. It's actually it gets you pretty close. It's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, it's been a rapid advance in the mobile app as well as the websites. But again, and part of this whole thing with the digital transformation I think people often mistake, at least business people, and think, well, digital means you're going to improve your website. No, that's not it. It's about all the underlying systems and the data underneath it. I did some work a couple of years ago with the University of North Carolina around a graduate degree they have in something called digital curation. And it was about how do you curate data? How do you make it available, keep it current? How do you decide, quality? When do you retire it? And all the things around that's pretty neat, but it's a core piece of what does it mean to be a digital organization, and that's the quality and accessibility of good data for the customer, for the organization, et cetera.
So are you keeping tabs on what's happening at Lowe's still, I imagine?
Yeah, I'm a few months removed. So I left in May. I was part of Lowe's Canada, which was interesting to come as the pandemic hit and the travel ban went on. But thank goodness for Microsoft Teams or Zoom or any of these other technologies. So was able to kind of pick it up and keep going. But yeah, I mean, I've got certainly a lot of friends there that I stay in touch with, and gotten to see a little bit, as much as you can see somebody these
Yeah.
days. So.
I'm wondering if, as you were looking at that radical change and introducing, the accelerated digital transformation that you sort of launched, what if any compliment might there have been as it relates to the pandemic and the reaction to the pandemic? What sort of overlap did you see?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to the word luck, Joe. I don't, because I also saw it happening in Canada as well. Maybe I'll take a little bit of the luck out and think, well, I've got some experience a little bit, which gives me a little bit of foresight. But what, I never foresaw the pandemic. Not that I shouldn't have foreseen it, because we knew one would come. But the work that we were doing to begin allowing, the website to get better, the mobile apps to get better, the whole digital transformation thing to let systems, the data communicate between systems, really started to pay off very quickly as people, left going to a store, because at first it was very limited. Canada was shut down for retail other than curbside pickup, for example. We were fortunately to get deemed an essential provider, in this whole scheme of everything. So to some extent, Lowe's and Home Depots and et cetera stayed open, which, ended up being a boom for them, because as people were sitting at home, you go, like I'm sitting here now looking at my sunroom, I go, I really need to paint these walls. So, or I'm gonna, need to fix this, whatever, so even if it wasn't so essential for survival, people took on a lot of home improvement projects. But the ability to be able to take orders without people having to come in the stores, to be able to check people out, without, with contactless payment, to be able to do things like curbside pickup or delivery, just huge things that had to go on. And you touched on something a second ago that was critical as well, because when I did my assessment of Lowe's coming in, again, as a sort of a consultant coming in, I also noted that we, and again, it wasn't only me seeing it, but I helped bring a different perspective to our opportunities from a supply chain perspective. Some of it was technology related, but some of it was just purely, if you're going to be a digital company, if you're going to be one of those best companies, again, part of it is you got to have a heck of a supply chain behind it. Because you can maybe be great at taking the order, but you also got to be really good at fulfilling the order, and that's the whole end-to-end process of it. So, I once said, and I'm not necessarily prone to these kinds of analogies, but I told the executive team, I said, as bad as the technology is, if I had one bullet to fire in my gun, I'd shoot it at the supply chain, because, we got to get that right. It's maybe in worse shape than the rest. So.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how many suppliers there are for a company the size of Lowe's, and with all the different manufacturers and products. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's complicated. Lowe's is, like 6 businesses within the roof of a Lowe's. It's an appliance business, it's a garden center, it's a general retail, it's a project-based stuff back when you get back to
Mhm.
cabinets and, et cetera. So you have all these different sort of businesses within the business. So they have different technology needs. And similarly, the technologies are a little, sometimes a little bit focused in a certain area, then the supply chain may behave differently as well. Because some of it, it's one thing to take an order from a store and ship product to a store, but now all of a sudden you're shipping, to consumers. Some of it, quick ship, because people want it more and more, within hours as opposed to within.
Yeah, that's
Terry,
great.
in your opinion, how has Amazon impacted strategy for Lowe's and other retailers? Like you just mentioned, right? The delivery, as an outsider, right? Amazon does a pretty good job of having the right orders, having them on time, or beating those times. Again, they've definitely kind of set the bar pretty high if other retailers get into it. So what's kind of your opinion on how Amazon has changed that customer expectations and like you said, supply chain model?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I use Amazon a lot myself. So I hate to talk badly about somebody I actually use frequently, but to some extent, they certainly are a disruptor in the business, in all, consumer based, and have chosen to be so. They'll enter businesses just to disrupt them, not even sure if they can make money in them or not. Um, but and some of the work that they've done in I'll call it the Lowe's realm, has been later coming on because it's more complex. Like you were talking about 2x4s, Joe, or if you think about buying a washing machine, et cetera, et cetera. And there's still an element of certain things that people like to go touch and see, like an appliance would be one of those. Um, but the um, but what they've done is changed not only sort of how we do business, but they've changed also, like you say, that expectation of how quickly I'll get it. And if you give people the choice to say, would you rather have this in 2 weeks or do you want it in a day? They're going to pick a day whether they really want it or not. I mean, and that's obviously a much more expensive fulfillment equation. But so it's made it more difficult, and it's part of the thing that companies, whether it's Lowe's or any retailer that that have tried to move their business away from, say, retail stores into e-commerce sorts of venues. It's harder to make the same margin. It's a more expensive business, and your pricing, you don't have the luxury of pricing it this way in this competitive market and this way in this other competitive market, because it is what it is, and so it's made how you do business a little bit more challenging, and the mix starts to challenge your profits, but it's what the consumer demands, and if you're in a consumer business, you have to be able to respond to what the consumer wants and figure out how to do it more profitably along the way.
Yeah, I spent some time in retail. I worked for Red Wing Shoe Company at some many hundreds of stores across the U.S. Most of them dealer stores, some company owned, and it's the working capital aspects of it, have to be really thoughtfully considered, because if you carried enough inventory to ship any product, you'd go broke. So you have to do a really good job of guessing at what to keep on hand. And I think you touched on something that's really interesting, in terms of Best Buy, or not Best Buy, but Amazon and Lowe's, for example. If I'm looking for a product and I can get it at either spot and I need it today, I'm going to Lowe's because I can see the inventory. I'm not waiting for Amazon to maybe get it to me by tomorrow or the next day if I need it right now. So that's been a huge, I think, advantage for brick and mortar operations, especially when they expose inventory levels to you as a consumer.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the complexity of all of that, and I'm sure it must have been a difficult challenge to pull off, because you've got this store inventory, you've got distribution center inventory, and it's just a whole sea of different complexities that most consumers don't even understand.
Yeah, and Joe, to that point, it's what makes you one of the best, and if you're going to be again, one of these best retailers is to have visibility all the way back in the supply chain, to
Yeah.
not only know what you got in your warehouse or in your store, but all the way back to what the manufacturer may have and what's in transit
Mhm.
and those kinds of things. So,
Be able to promise all of that sort of fun stuff. Yeah.
yep.
It is complicated. And, if you're not involved in supply chain, those things that just seem like easy breezy things to do. And as we both know, that is not the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Managing demand and all of that just gets to be, I would sit in on the demand planning sessions at Red Wing just to sort of understand the whole working capital and sales and matching it up with demand and how good were we at guessing. And it was never 100%, but it got better and better over the years. I'd love to shift gears a little bit and just talk a little bit about cybersecurity. I know you've had some experience in that role, and especially as it relates to kind of the C-suite and what their perspective is on cyber. It used to be years ago you'd have to fight for every dollar. It seems like that might have loosened up a bit. The pandemic has had certainly an implication to cyber. What is your perspective on the C-suite and their attitude about cybersecurity these days?
Yeah, so I've seen exactly what you're describing, and part of the evolution over the years. I think there was a point when even in my years, that's one of the things of being an old person like me with this gray hair. You've sort of grown up with it all. But I remember when security really was a tough thing to sell. And some people wanted to quote buy the insurance, some didn't, and they certainly wanted to minimize the cost. Um, I was the CIO for Deleuze Group when Hannaford had a data breach, and it was amazing how that changed perspectives. But probably the biggest thing that I saw as one of those impacts really was when Target had their breach, and I forget what year, but say 2012 or
Yeah,
2013.
right. I
Get
was in
the
Minneapolis at the time.
Okay, so they sort of woke a lot of people up to what could happen, and I worked at Belk as CTO. To Part of it was in response to their desire to really come to grips with security. They didn't want to breach there, and help build out that program there. But it was one of my roles at Lowe's. Sort of across my 2 years, I ended up filling that role for about 6 months. And it has to be part of a digital strategy. I mean, to be honest with you, it's part of any organization's responsibilities now. I mean, and it goes to the consumer as well. It's not an isolation. Consumers have to be aware of security. Personal individuals have to be aware of security, and organizations have to do everything they can to minimize risk, because you can't eliminate it. I often say the bad guys are a lot better funded than all of us are. And there is the only competition that we have, Mike, going back to what you could do, say within, your balance on IT is like, let's all talk about what we're doing around security, because there are no competitors except the bad guys. And the more we can all share best practices and what we're doing, make all the sense of the world. And so it's got to be core. And the other problem is, Joe, to your point, it's not inexpensive, and you keep new tools come out, new perspectives. It's not only first when I got into it, it was like, let's protect the perimeter. That was the idea. Let's keep them out. Well, pretty soon we figured out we aren't keeping them out. What we've got to do is figure out how to contain them and know about them when they get in. And what are they doing? What are they seeing? So, the vectors of all this, started to change, there keep being more and more solutions to come to bear, and it requires continued investment and continued analysis of where my weaknesses are. But you know what? No matter how great a job you can do, you could get nailed, and that's just sort of the reality of it.
Yeah, that certainly is. The American Institute of CPAs does an annual risk assessment sort of survey, and back in April of this year, they did their normal survey and got some interesting results back. And it still surprises me how few companies have risk management programs, formal programs. And their stats, I think, if I recall correctly, said that only 30% of companies have formal risk management programs, enterprise risk management programs. And those typically are the big guys, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's just surprising to me, given the notoriety and the publicity that, you know, the Targets of the world and there's millions of other different breaches that we've had, that it doesn't seem to rise up to the level of importance. I've got a client now that I'm working with that is, we're trying to get an enterprise risk management program rolled out, and it's like pulling teeth to get people to pay attention to it. I just like the joke, it's a team sport now. It's not just the cybersecurity team's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility.
Yeah, we did a good job at Lowe's about a year ago, but it was having, you know, was the best roundtable sort of table exercise that I've seen, where we, you know, the different groups got in a room, and then somebody, a third party, was like, here's what just happened, you know, and now what are you going to do? And kind of going around to different groups, whether it's the retailers, the communications group, certainly the technology group, et cetera, but everybody calling out their role and what they would do, and then, you know, kind of review that. But then all of a sudden somebody bring in, well, we just found out this, because this is the way real world, you don't know it all at first, and then somebody bring in a new thing, you know, and, you know, just kept, you know, sort of making the situation more complex, but really good to go through to really nail down people awareness and their role in playing it. We did something similar at Belk as well, but
Yeah, those tabletop exercises are, for organizations that do undertake them, are pretty revealing. The exec teams, I think, are often, in fact, most cases, are surprised and shocked by how creative cyber criminals can be.
yeah.
And you know, they don't take any time off, and
No.
they're at it, and they're constantly evolving and growing and getting better at, you know, at their craft, which is unfortunate. But in that, you know, that's the other thing too, is that, well, you said it earlier, we spend a lot of money on cyber. How much is enough? And I don't think anyone can answer that question just yet.
No, and I mean, it's hard to, you know, it's one of those opportunity cost things, but, you know, you can compare it, you know, if we have a breach, what does it cost us, you know, and it's difficult to measure the reputational damage that can happen from it. But, you know, and obviously it's expanded from just, you know, my initial worries in the day were PCI, card data.
Mm.
But, you know, it's gotten into now, depending on what all you have in your organization, certainly PII, personal information, that can go a long way, that your associates depend on you keeping private. There's the California Data Privacy Act that steps all of this up in certain terms of privacy, and that's spreading across the country,
Yeah.
but set a new standard. And then if you have health information, depending on your business and how you manage that, that's another element. So all of it, these things are valuable assets, and you could, you know, go and say, well, we've got, you know, proprietary information about how we compete. Yeah, and that's in financial information. That's important, but not probably as nearly as important as all those other things
Yeah.
along the way. So,
Yeah, no doubt. I just, it's interesting to see in the cyberspace. Um, Mike and I have seen an explosion of as a service solutions hitting the market on the cyber front. And that's been a trend, Terry, that you and I have witnessed over the years on almost every aspect of IT. You know, at Snap, when I was leaving, we were going to Manhattan Associates, Manhattan Scale, their inventory management platform, as a service. And whereas I used to have, you know, application experts and integration experts and systems administrators and patching servers, and all of a sudden that stuff isn't needed anymore. Love to get your take, Terry, on, you know, kind of the future state of IT, given the as a service movement and cloud, and what you see IT's role sort of evolving to over the coming years.
well, you know, if you go back to it, I mean, you know, again, over this history, we went from, we've always been change agents. And, um, you know, and the evolutions of technology get, you know, faster and faster and everything else. I think there's still going to be, depending on the size and complexity of your business, I think there's still, I used to argue this with people, you know, like about mainframes. was like, well, they're not going to go away as quickly as you think because there is a role for them to play. And I think, data centers and some of the things we have to grapple with, from, having systems secured in a room that's environmentally controlled, and you've got a patch and all that, we're not going to get away from those. But I think there is a great promise and a great opportunity with cloud-based solutions. Clearly, the network is again one of those things that went to something that we kind of had, but we didn't think that much of it, to now, the network is IT. I mean, you've got to have it, um, you know, uh, and and the cloud is all part of that internet connectivity. And you still have to go through the rigors of things we've talked about. It changes what you do from a security perspective,
Mhm.
and you've got to be sure of their security, because now, you're dependent upon somebody you can't necessarily see and touch. Now, chances are they could be a lot better at it than you are, but you don't know that until you do some investigation, interrogation, and have a process for how do you do that, do a risk assessment of someone you're signing up with, because just because they sell it doesn't mean they have it, and it's important to know.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun time to be involved in technology. I think it's actually true that we've become more business leaders over the years.
Yeah.
Those of us who paid attention and tried to move IT in that direction. I think it's going to be fun to watch what happens here in the coming years as we watch from afar. How's it been, stepping out of the role as an active CIO and sort of observing and watching and learning? I know for me, it's been a lot of fun. I actually, by the way, enjoy not having to do budgets anymore, and, uh, and performance appraisals, which nobody likes to do. So that's been nice.
I actually always liked I like performance appraisals, because back to, I like to coach and develop people. I think that became more and more of a thing when I go in to do these roles. I look at myself less as the new boss and somebody as the new person to coach and develop people,
Yeah.
and everything else. But the one I'm really glad, I can't tell you how many times in my career I've gone in the, look, we're in the fourth quarter. We really got to tighten it up, and we got to go for the gold. I'm tired of those conversations, but each time it takes me a little bit of time to rev up as I've done these interim executive roles. But the rev gets faster because you kind of know how to go about doing it. But no, I've enjoyed it. It is different because it's I have the constant of macro integration services that, I can do a lot, by, they're great to meet me for dinner somewhere, at least pre-pandemic. And we would, do stuff by phone and by email and doing it in the evenings and everything else. So they really allowed a lot, but it's been interesting to get to see the experiences with different companies. Um, there's always a core to what you're drawing upon, no matter which industry, which company, or whatever else, but you've got to apply it differently. And the conversations you might lead with different individuals might be a little bit different. But I found it to be really interesting. And I like now, I still consider myself, like I've said a couple of times, I used the word retired back in 2010. Um, but because I'm just in a different realm, I get to do, more of what I like to do, and I do it. It's fun for me, and I like to keep my synapses firing, and that's what it's, a little bit of what I take most out of it is just the chance to see a challenge and be able to help
Yeah.
bring a solution to it. But
Yeah, I'm
it's
with you. The coaching and mentoring part of what I do now is actually the most rewarding. And it's so different than the traditional performance review process, which is very regimented and rigid and once a year or twice a year, sometimes if you're lucky. I love the real time aspects of it and giving people direct feedback. I've had a real chance to see especially when you get a leader that's willing to listen and you watch their evolution, that's incredibly fun to watch. So it's been great. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. I'd love to hear more about your current company and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, well, thank you. So yeah, like I said, I'm really lucky to be part of Macro Integration Services, and I was a customer before I became the CEO, and so I was able to see, from afar, I guess, the principles of the organization, which were, being a partner first, high integrity, et cetera, and being able to join that hasn't been something like a shoe that doesn't fit that you're trying to get into. It's just been, it's part of who I am, and so it's been really good. We grew. We kind of came into existence as a company to serve Foodland, and I don't know the exact count now, but we probably have. And Macro came about in 2001, but we have probably over 30 customers and brands like, so grocery, we have, the Ahold Delhaize world, we have Southeast Grocers, which is Winn-Dixie, and Harvey's, and Fresco y Mas. But we started getting in more to quick serve restaurants. So people like Subway, Biscuitville, Cookout, Arby's has been a big customer. And then I don't know if I mentioned Krispy Kreme, a local brand,
Yeah.
doing a lot of work with, and have been for many years, and also into alcoholic beverage control spaces. So a number of the ABC companies in North Carolina just are rolling out, in Virginia, ABC, and hospitality as well, with people like Extended Stay America, et cetera. So, we've really broadened our business, and we've been able to be very successful through the pandemic because, again, an essential provider to many essential customers. And ours, by and large, fortunately, have not been negatively impacted per se from the pandemic, and have actually found reasons to thrive. But we are able to help that by bringing safety solutions to bear, as well as innovative technologies that help them with drive-through technologies, or curbside pickup, et cetera. So it's a great time to be at Macro as well. We're having a lot
Yeah.
of fun.
Are you building your own solutions, or are you finding them and delivering them?
Yeah, so we build a few things like kiosks. We will actually custom design and build those with components. We
Sure.
acquire components and build.
Right.
But most of it, we're a value-added reseller. We do a lot of work with HP, for example, and depending on the point of sale needs, help that. And some of our customers, buy their own solutions, and we stage it and install it. Some of our customers want to buy from us, find that cost advantageous, and they'll buy it, and we go through the whole thing. So we're really a very customizable, so we can help source, warehouse, stage, deploy, and then in some cases, unfortunately, the other way, people will close stores, so we'll uninstall and then either warehouse or ecologically dispose of technology without a future. So
that's great. Well, I appreciate that. I just want to say thank you for spending some time with Mike and I on the podcast today. Mike, any other thoughts that you'd like to share with us this morning?
Yeah. So Terry, if folks want to get a hold of you, I do have one last question, but if folks want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is it LinkedIn, your website? And we'll put this in the show notes.
Yeah,
as well.
T Morgan at macrointegrations, an S on the end.com. So macrointegrations.com. And then our website is www.macrointegrations.com. We just launched a new website. It's got some content out there to help provide resources for people who are looking at technology decisions, and certainly welcome anyone to reach out. But I really thank both of you for inviting me to join you and the people that view the podcast. It's great to be a part of it.
No, thanks. One last question, because we haven't had any guests. Again, talk about Fortune 500 and Wall Street. I worked for MCI WorldCom, which became WorldCom. Been with Level 3 when I was with TW Telecom, Time Warner Telecom. We were acquired by Level 3, and then also was with Hosted Solutions, which was acquired by Windstream. So I've worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies, and I know that Wall Street has good influences and bad influences. A lot of impact of Wall Street. In your mind, as a Fortune 500 CIO or as a CISO, what are some of the things that Wall Street is doing right now, or what they're doing in the future? Like what's Wall Street's impact, right? That most people maybe not see because they're not sitting in the board meetings, knowing what Wall Street is doing, right? So where do you see, Wall Street playing an advantage or helping maybe that CIO or that CISO do what they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things I think about as you ask the question. When I've worked in private and public companies, and I used to think when I was in public that all the private people have it made, but they just got their own pressures, so it's not so different. But I think what Wall Street, the bad of it is the quarter-to-quarter expectations. That's the bad of it.
No long term, long term. It's real quick,
So they work against long term. But the good news of it is, and there are much better conversations now that happen, with analysts and everything else. That when I read Marvin Ellison's analyst calls now and everything else, he's talking about technology and the importance that technology is playing in their overall business strategy. And I think the focus to be able to have that be, to your both of your points earlier, to have technology be part of the business, not just another thing, or we're just serving the business. Sometimes we are the strategy. And that's really elevated it. And I think Wall Street's helped drive those expectations. So therefore, that helps your funding and the chance to really make a difference.
That's good. Yeah, I got to imagine those analysts that are tech friendly or cyber friendly can asking the right questions on those calls, right? Quarterly calls can help investments if you're sitting there as the CIO or the CDO or the CISO, right? So no, thanks for sharing that. That's really important and kind of neat to understand.
Yep.
Joe, anything else?
Right. No, it's I just want to wish both of you happy holidays coming up on the Christmas holiday and New Year's holiday. And be safe, and I'll keep you posted on the Moderna vaccine.
Yeah, good luck with that. I'm anxious to get mine. So, all right, take care.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. Thanks,
everyone.
Joe.
Take care.
Take care.